Hey there, I'm Brad Miller, and here with Jason Medford. And today, we're walking a spiritual path with you, and we want to talk a little bit about the idea of codes of conduct. This is something that I know has been mentioned kind of in passing, maybe in previous episodes, and it was something that I wrote down as a note as we were talking through things. And kind of going back through my notes, it kind of jumped out at me as today as something I think may be beneficial to talk about. And the one we specifically talked about in that episode was the idea of do no harm. And so I think that's something we've talked a little bit about this in different ways, different episodes, but maybe kind of focus on that one a little bit today, and then maybe see what else comes up as far as codes of conduct. Um, but I think first, the first question is what do we mean by code of conduct in the first place? Like, what is a code of conduct?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I think I mentioned in the last episode, if this one comes out after last one, I
Who
used to be the
knows? It comes up when it
head of
comes.
ethics and compliance. So guess what? I was responsible for company codes of conduct in organizations, and it's in a way kind of very similar. So just to kind of give people a reference point, because most people, especially if you work in a organization, your organization probably has a code of conduct, right? Which is the kind of the expectations of behaviors if you're
Mhm.
working for our company, right?
My
So
daughter has one at her school.
yeah, in our company we do this. At your daughter's school, right? Students are, respectful, right? They're, no harassing, whatever, right?
Yep.
That are probably included in their school code of conduct. And so in a way, it's kind of like that. And there are, many different codes of conduct for us to follow. Some, again, we'll talk about one or two maybe on this one. Um, and really kind of what it means or how it goes into it is, um, we know that there are universal uh, laws, cause, effect, right? Reciprocity, Eine, you know, that there are certain laws upon which everything operates, right? For every choice, there's a consequence, cause, effect, right? You get to choose what you're going to do. You don't always get to choose the consequence, right? Um, but there is an effect for every choice that you make. And so there's this whole idea of universal laws that we should be following because, again, if you don't, then obviously karmic things can end up happening to you and other things like that. But codes of conduct kind of go along with it in how we are doing or being, right? And so if we take, for example, and like I said, we made reference to do no harm before.
Mhm.
So do no harm is a code of conduct. You can choose to follow it. You can choose not to follow it. It's up to you, right? Um, I choose to follow it, okay? Because I don't want any bad karma. I've got enough from previous lives that I'm clearing and stuff from this life that I'm clearing. So I don't want any more, right? But when we think about it, again, do no harm. When I say that, it can mean a lot of different things. Okay. And this kind of came up because on a previous episode we were talking about, doing business differently as we've, kind of gone down the spiritual path. And doing no harm really kind of goes along with that. There's some people who are willing to lie, cheat, and steal to take your money, right? There's plenty of
Yep.
scams out there. There's people that steal money, whether they're stealing it because they sell you a product that they lied to you about, or whether they're actually literally stealing your money. right? From online scams or, identity theft, whatever it is, right?
Hmm.
But those people are doing harm to other people because they're taking something that is not theirs without the consent of the other person, right? And so, and again, that's where the intention and the doing no harm comes in, right? And so you can see this in some different applications. And again, I'm gonna use some different analogies just to make a point to people. Okay, so don't get pissed at me for any of this. But so one thing we can do is have sex, right? Two people can have sex, you know,
Hmm.
in whatever form that might be. There's a big difference between having consensual sex, right, versus rape. The act is the same, but the code of conduct applied is different, right? And so, the same way as we can choose to do business in any way that we want to. And honestly, some people do business in a rape kind of fashion. Other people, it's consensual, right? And again, just to make a point, just to make a hyperbolic point, because Jason likes to be hyperbolic sometimes, right? But, the how else does this kind of really work into our real practical lives of doing no harm? Well, obviously, doing no harm can mean physical things,
Hmm.
right?
So violence.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so, you can look at that and say, well, if I'm going to do no harm, I'm not going to physically hit Brad, right? Because that would be doing physical harm to him. But I could also, in my interactions with Brad, I could do something about just as bad as punching him in the face, which is to make fun of him and demean him and ridicule him and say all kinds of whatever things I want to make Brad feel bad about himself. Well, that would be doing harm, right? It's not physical harm, but it's still harm, right? And so, those are kind of some practical ways of thinking about it that you can kind of wrap your head around. And I think when I was referring to also do no harm is what's interesting sometimes, especially on the spiritual path, and you may notice me do it, you may not notice me do it. But for example, a lot of times religious texts or holy texts that are out there, like, they're not too far away. Two different examples I happen to have right on my desk: the Bhagavad Gita and the Tao Te Ching. Right? So these are both books in kind of that spiritual realm, and a lot of people when they read them, they're like, "I don't get it. I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's so simple, but it doesn't make any sense." That's done on purpose to do no harm. So what happens, right, most of the time on this spiritual path is things are hidden. And I think we talked about this on a previous episode. Remember where we were talking
Yeah.
about
The example we
the
used about
gods
the
getting
God's height.
together,
Yeah.
yeah, and the gods hiding the truth, and they hid it within ourselves, right? Because that's
Yep.
the last place we would look. And part of it, because it goes back to one of the universal laws is once you know, you can't unknow. And I made reference, I think, on the last episode to that. Once one knows, they cannot unknow, and they are held responsible for what they know. Okay. And so if we share more with someone than we should, we actually can do them harm. right? Because if they're not ready to hear it, then they may just discount it. They may choose not to believe it if they're not ready. But they also may be held accountable because now they know, but now they're choosing not to do anything about it. And so that's where, the do no harm comes in a lot of different ways, that way.
Hmm.
Because it's, another analogy that I've been taught is, um, that my mentor shares with me often is we're kind of like a fuse box or an electric panel in our bodies, right? And as we maybe we start off as a little 5 watt, bulb or a 5 watt amp
Fuse,
fuse or something like that. We
circuit
can only
breakers.
we can
There we
only
go.
yeah, we got circuit breakers now. I used to have fuses in my old house, the old screw ones that would like burn the wire. Um, but so what happens, if you're only a five amp circuit breaker, you can only handle 5 amps worth of energy. If 10 amps goes through it, then it burns out, right?
Pops. Yep.
It pops. And so, part of, again, our spiritual path and involvement is effectively upgrading our circuit panels to go from a 5 amp to a 15 to a 20 to a 50 to 100 to 1,000 to 1,000,000 to whatever, right? As we move up. And so, the more that we evolve, the higher we get in our frequency and vibration, the more energy we can actually handle. If too much energy or too much knowledge goes through us, we pop, right? We pop at that
Hmm.
point. And so that's again where doing no harm comes in. You can't share 20 amp information with somebody who's only operating on 5 amps.
Hmm.
Because what would happen? You pop the breaker. What caused the pop of the breaker? You sharing more than you should have,
Yeah.
right? And as a result of that, and it's one thing my mentor says to us when he's talking to us, he's like, the minute I start seeing the glazy eyes, I know I have to stop. So he can energetically see like when we've received as much as we can receive and he needs to stop
Hmm.
at that point because he doesn't want to pop our breakers. And so it's the same thing, here. And that's why, again, publicly I can share some things. Publicly I can't share some things because it
A lot more
wouldn't.
than you can share, in fact, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, because I just can't share certain things for different reasons. But one of the reasons is if people aren't ready, I shouldn't share it with them,
Yeah.
right? And so, again, especially in a public space like this where anybody can have access to it, you kind of have to be a little bit careful. And so that's why,
Sure.
but do no harm. That's in most ancient traditions. You'll hear that in
Hmm.
most ancient traditions. It was one of the codes in Delphi. Uh, another one was know thyself, which we have talked about before, right? Is that, the more that we know ourselves, the more that we actually live in that way. And the more we can, then follow the universal laws in a better way by understanding who we actually are and remembering who we are, as well. And so those are two, like I said, that are, they're commonplace out there. I mean, people can find them anywhere. If I refer to books like the Tao Te Ching or the Bhagavad Gita, I mean, those are all, again, they're public facing things that many people have probably read. They may not understand it. They may
Hmm.
understand it one way, but they may understand it a completely different way
Hmm.
next month, right? And so even I think last episode it was the same thing. We were talking about that, how something last week that I was taught all of a sudden kind of upped my circuit breaker a little bit, and now I understand it a little bit different, but I couldn't understand it that way before when
Hmm.
I was operating on the lower amperage.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that analogy. Like it's just a really good picture to see that. And I think it makes a lot of sense and it's easy to understand. You can't, as a person, we can't handle, we have limits of what we can handle. And if we try to get something above that, then like you said, that's where we pop. It's when, people are, it kind of bring it down to the 3D level, kind of emotionally distraught over something. And then you give them another bit of bad news and they just have them break down, because they were already kind of teetering that edge and
Yeah.
just kind of put them over. And it happens a lot. Like I said, I think we can see it definitely on the 3D level. But like we've always talked about, everything that happens in the 3D level happens on the higher levels as well. And so it makes a lot of sense, from an energetic level, from some of this information that's out there, that there's just things that we aren't ready for,
Mhm.
that we just don't have the capacity for, because we'll snap, we'll pop. um,
Well, and it's okay. I mean, it's not, and again, that's why we talk about walking a spiritual path, right? I mean, the first time you go out hiking, you're a novice, right?
mhm,
The first time you go out camping, or maybe wilderness hiking and camping, right? There's only certain things that you're maybe capable of. There's only certain things that you know about. And
mhm,
so, you have to, be a little careful, but eventually, over time, you start learning and developing some of these other things that now you have. Now it's part of your repertoire, right? And as you do more, take yoga as an example, right? I mean,
mhm,
there's certain basic yoga positions that people can kind of get themselves into and hold it for a few seconds, but there's other people who can hold complex yoga positions for hours. Well, it takes time to get there, right?
mhm,
And anybody who's ever, gone to yoga, they don't teach you, some, advanced yoga move until you understand and have the basics mastered. And so it's the same thing here, right? And it's
mhm.
it's like, so many people, want to see beings and want to have, all of these, other experiences.
Yep.
And I will tell you, if you want to interact with elevated beings, you better elevate yourself because they don't want to have anything to do with you in the sewer, right? It's like if you can't pull yourself out of the sewer and quit smelling like shit, right? From a 3D perspective, and your anger and your fear and your hate and your everything else, they don't want to have anything to do with you. They can't be around you. Literally, some of these beings cannot be in your presence or you will snap energetically, pop, right? And so, it's not about them not wanting to have interaction with us. It's about us getting prepared, cleaning ourselves, and getting on their vibrational, frequency that then you can actually commune with these other beings, right? It's all about us, right?
Mhm,
They don't want to do harm to us. So until we upgrade our systems, upgrade our software, upgrade
mhm,
our circuits, they can't be around us or they would do harm to us, right?
mhm,
And again, that's why a lot of the stuff we talk about on here may seem very elementary, very
mhm,
elementary. But if you can't handle the elementary, if you can't have discipline on the elementary, no way are you ready for the advanced. No
Mhm.
way, right?
Mhm.
Because you would hurt yourself. Just like if you tried to, you know, well, I'm gonna look online on this yoga advanced move. Oh, that one looks really pretty cool. I'm gonna curl myself up into this
Mhm.
bunch and I'm gonna hold it for an hour. Well, I don't think you're gonna be able to move for the next couple days if you choose to do that, right? You can choose to do it, but you're probably gonna pop. And, that's why, again, if you can't, I mean, yoga is one of these things. I've done a little bit of it, but to me, it's a very beautiful art form in the way that the positions and how you can move between positions,
Flow, yeah.
fluidly and everything. But it takes practice. It takes work to
Mhm.
do that. And so, you're not ready for more until you um, did some of the basics.
Yeah.
And
That reminds
the basics are never done, right?
Well, because they're not, yeah, I mean, we always want to jump to the complex. We want to jump to the advanced stuff. We don't want to take the time to learn steps 1 and 2. We want to get to steps 20 and 30. Um, in everything we do. I mean, it's some of it is lack of patience. Um, again, my daughter being a great example, before they learn complex, long division and multiplication and things, they have to learn the basic stuff. They need to learn basic math, addition, subtraction, and then they move on to more complex addition and subtraction, and then they get to some basic multiplication, 1 times 2 and 2 times 3 and those things before they start going to 5 times 752. Like you got to do it in the order because if you try to jump all of a sudden say, okay, you know, fourth grader, we're going to start learning trigonometry today, they're going to pop.
They're
Like,
gonna pop.
like, yeah, it's not going to make sense to them. It's not going to work out. They're not going to get anything out of it. You're just going to be wasting your time and spinning your wheels. And this actually kind of reminds me of a meme that I saw lately talking about, people wanting to be able to see aliens and things and stuff. But the meme was like, people want to see aliens, but look how we treat each other. The hate that we have for each other and the way that we, you know, don't care for other people and their environment and those things around us. Why do we think that we could deal with or be able to handle meeting with extraterrestrials or something? You know,
Yeah, well, because it's like, if you can't deal well with someone who looks like you but has a
right?
different colored skin, if you can't deal with that, how are you
Exactly.
going to deal with this little bug that comes to you that's that tall and it's an alien and you're not going to understand it?
Hmm.
If you can't love and connect and be one with someone who actually looks like you but just with a different color skin,
Hmm.
or someone who maybe even has the same skin color but a different religion, if you can't deal with that, there's no way you can deal with aliens,
Yeah.
extraterrestrials, star brothers and sisters is my preferred term. There's no way that you can deal with it. It would pop your reality. It would
Hmm.
literally pop your reality. And that's why they hold themselves back and
Right.
only
Because
show
they're
themselves
doing
to
no
those.
harm.
Yeah, because they're doing no harm and they're only showing themselves to those people who are actually prepared and ready. Right.
Hmm.
Um, and I think, as we were talking about some of these elementary things, because again, most of what we talk about on here is going to be elementary. So for all of you that think, oh, I already know that, well, okay, go somewhere else. Because I can almost guarantee you have not mastered the elementary.
I know I haven't, and if I haven't, I'm
And
sure that.
and I know some people that are way ahead and they still do the elementary stuff. And here's
Hmm.
the reason why. I think the Karate Kid movie
Hmm.
is one of the best examples of why this is important. In that movie, Daniel wants to learn karate, and so he says, "Mr. Miyagi," because he got beat up. It's like, "Mr. Miyagi, can you teach me karate so I won't get beat up?" Sure, sure, sure. Well, when can we start? Well, you come over tomorrow. Come over tomorrow. So he comes over tomorrow and he gives, I can't remember which order it was, right? But he gives him a paintbrush and he says, go paint the fence. And when you paint the fence, do it like this: up, down, up, down, up, down. Switch hands, up, down, right? And so he does that for a couple of days and he's really tired. And he's like, Mr. Miyagi, when are we going to learn karate? Oh, first you sand the floor. But when you sand the floor, go, oh, oh, ha, ha, right? So he's giving him all these different things, right? Sand the floor, polish the car. I can't remember. There were four or five
Wax on,
things.
wax off. Yeah.
Wax on, wax off, right? And so he was he was giving him all these things to do. Very elementary. Seems very elementary. Seems very 3D. But if Dan, and finally, Daniel got fed up and he's like, Mr. Miyagi, blah, 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 blah. You teach me karate. And he's like, show me paint the fence. No, show me paint the fence. Right. And he attacks him while he's doing paint the fence because that elementary thing was learning karate. It was developing the muscles. It was developing the technique. Right. And
Mhm.
it's that way in what we're doing. If you can't do the elementary things with discipline every day, every week, whatever it is. And again, we all have bad days, we get distracted sometimes, but if you can't keep doing them and correct yourself and come back and come back and come back. Imagine if after the end of the first day, Daniel would have said, screw it. I already know how to paint the fence. What do you mean up, down? I know how to paint a fence. I paint it like this, right? If he had that ego and pretty much said, screw you, Mr. Miyagi, I'm not going to paint your fence for you for free, and would have left, he never would have learned. But most people on the spiritual path, they give up like that. After a day or two, oh my gosh, this is hard. I don't understand it. Okay, give up.
Or it seems too easy and boring. And like when we
See,
get the fun stuff, the
when are
advanced
you
stuff.
when are you going to teach me something?
Right.
Right? I mean, people say this all the time. I mean, I cannot imagine it. It's like teachers coming to people with gold, effectively, and like, oh, I already know what gold is. What? You already know all this? Right? And so again, but that's part of the ego that we're getting rid of along the way too. But that's why again, it's like the elementaries are so important. Because again, imagine Mr. Miyagi. He's doing no harm, right? Do you think he could have thrown punches at Daniel the first day and expected him to actually be able to defend himself? Absolutely not, right? He was a karate master. He had been taught a certain way. He was apprenticed. He knew what he had gone through, right? And so
Mhm.
he was apprenticing him the same way, where he was showing him, how to do it because, to get right into it would have done Daniel harm,
Mhm.
right? Because either he could have hurt himself as they were practicing, or he may have even felt like he was more ready than he actually was.
Mhm.
See, and I think that's another thing that sometimes we don't think about because of all of these, online courses and coaches and certifications. And look, I'm certified after a 2 day training. Really, really, right? This takes years and lifetimes to develop. And so, again, I think that's why, with the do no harm, some of those things are put in place to see if people really have the discipline
Mhm.
to deserve it. Cause and effect. Universal law. If you're not willing to paint the fence, Why should you expect the effect? So, anyway, do no harm, huh? Did that go where you were expecting it to go, Brad?
That went just where it was expected to go, when it was supposed to go. Um, I mean, because this is such a big one, and there's so many layers to it.
Hmm.
Because there's we talked about the 3D, don't punch somebody, if you don't want to get punched back. The golden rule is sort of a thing when it comes to physical actions. Don't, when it comes to emotional stuff, don't manipulate people, don't lie, those kind of things, because you can cause harm to them and all that stuff. But I love the fact that we were able to take it to the next level up. And how does it apply to the kind of the spiritual realm when it comes to the
Hmm.
energetics? Um, because that, I mean, it's all part of this kind of basic, you got to learn kind of stuff. But I think it's also important to at least let people see the application of how it applies to you're not just paying the fence, but you're paying the fence because that motion is going to get you to be able to get to the next level step when it comes to learning karate. And the kind of same thing here that, you know, do no harm is helping you get to the next level. You want to be able to talk to star brothers and sisters. So how do you do that? First, you have to learn how to raise your vibration and frequency. And how do you do that? With some of these little basic stuff we talk about. Don't get into your shit. Treat others with how you want to be treated. All those kind of stuff. Um, but I think once you can make that connection, it makes it a whole lot easier to get people to buy in to actually doing the work as
Hmm.
opposed to just painting the fence. So Mr. Miyagi would have said, "Hey, Daniel, paint the fence." And he's like, "This is stupid. Why am I doing this?" Well, because this is the, learning, you're strengthening your wrists or your your muscle memory or something, he may have been a lot less reluctant, or more less frustrated, I guess, when he had to do the floors and had to wax on and wax off and all this other stuff, you know.
But sometimes the frustration is part of the art of
And it
apprenticeship.
and it is. This is true. This is true.
Right? Because
This
again,
is true.
frustration is one of those, vibrations that we need to stop. I need to
Yeah.
stop. I end up there way too much. I'm working on it. I'm getting better.
Yeah. I've got a 9-year-old daughter.
But it's
I mean,
but and sometimes frustration is part of the apprenticeship, right?
yes.
So again, we don't necessarily need to. That's why Mr. Miyagi didn't tell him. He didn't sit down with him at the beginning
Hmm.
and say, okay, Daniel, here's what's going to happen, right? Is I'm going to have you do these chores around the house. You're going to be pissed at me because you're going to think I'm just trying to get free labor from you. But really, what I'm doing is this, right? He didn't do that.
No.
And it doesn't happen that way on purpose because that's not how we learn, right? And again,
Right.
he would be sharing more than he needed to, right? And even with me, as I've learned, simple practices like blessing the water. At first
Hmm.
it's like, that's kind of weird, right? And do you think I get told why I should do that? No. Just like Daniel didn't get taught, right?
Hmm.
But as I have the discipline to do it every day, every time I come in contact with water in whatever form or fashion that may be, multiple times a day, the more I do it, the more I start to understand why. And I learn a lot of the deeper things behind it. That's part of the learning, right?
Hmm.
And that's why, again, holy people, whatever you want to term you want to use, that's why they teach in the way that they do. And they also don't command you to do anything. Do it, don't do it, it's up to you. Why? Do no harm. It's your choice. Brad, I would be doing you harm to take away your free will and choice by forcing you to do something. No, you have to want to do it on your own. You have to choose to do it. If you don't, that's fine. It's up to you. It's your choice, right? And that's another very practical 3D thing too, is don't try to control people. Let
Hmm.
people have their own experience. Let
Hmm.
people choose for themselves. Because the minute you try to take that away, the minute you try to manipulate, the minute you try to control somebody, you're breaking that code. You're doing harm. Do no harm, right? And that's another very
Hmm.
practical thing.
Yeah.
Because again, from a 3D perspective, we want to. And that's why when we were talking before, it's like, man, if you want to hard sale close somebody and manipulate him into buying or doing something, is that doing no harm? Is that really their free will and choice? Or are you manipulating or intimidating or bullying somebody into doing what you want them to do instead of what their free choice is? So,
Hmm.
like I said, I mean, it's just like everything else. Do no harm. Do no harm. Three little words that mean so much
Hmm.
and have so many applications and mean so many different things over the course of our journey because they mean different things at different times. And we
Hmm.
see things in different ways at different times, right?
Hmm. Yeah, this was a tough one with my daughter. The idea of giving her the choice, not controlling.
Well, and she's to the age now. She's 9, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Starting to get to
Up,
that point
up,
now.
yeah, up until for every kid, it's a little bit different, but really kind of between the ages of about 7 and 10,
Hmm.
they kind of become their own individual and really
Hmm.
need to have, uh, instead of controlling, they need to start learning cause and effect
Hmm.
and
Yep.
allow them to choose. But obviously, if the choice is not a wise choice, then there's consequences.
Right.
And how to do that. And like you said, every kid is different, so
Right.
everyone is unique. But
Yeah,
yeah,
because you get the competing. You want them to not not want to control them, so that they have the choice. That there's that aspect of doing no harm, but there's also doing no harm if that they're not ready to make that jump yet to the cause and effect, where they're not being able to put together that this cause is this effect. So which is if you know that, then by allowing it to do it, you're harming them that way. So it's yeah, it's that fine line that we walk as as the parent that
well, maybe
again
that's another
practicals
episode. Who knows? I mean, but it's who knows? But it's yeah,
yeah,
and that's one of the hardest things. But
yeah.
even as adults, I think sometimes we try to control other people around us and
Oh,
manipulate
definitely.
other people around us more than we should. And again, it goes against do no
Oh
harm.
yeah. Yeah, micromanaging, all kinds of stuff. Yeah,
Yep.
all part of it.
Bullying,
Yep.
harassing, get people to do what you want them to do.
Coercions. Yep.
Uh-huh. All that.
So,
And again, if that's what you want to do, that's fine, but there's an effect.
right.
There will be an effect. If you bully someone, there will be an effect.
Yep.
And it probably isn't going to be the effect that you want, but maybe it is. I don't know,
Sure.
right? Um, but for every action, there's a reaction. So
Hmm.
yeah, do no harm.
Yeah.
Good, good, good.
Yeah. So
So
I know we kind of teased with the idea of codes of conduct, and we really focused on this one today. But as you saw, I mean, we've been going on for probably a good, I don't know, 40 minutes or so just on this one, because there's so many layers to it. Um,
yeah, and I think it's You don't need to know all the codes. Remember, we talked about the circuit panels to begin with.
Hmm.
Okay. Uh, and I get told this again. My mentor, he didn't say this to me, but I guess he said it to somebody else. Came back to him and it's like, hey, teach me something else. He's like, well, are you blessing the water? Well, no. Well, why aren't you blessing the water? Well, I forgot. Well, why'd you choose to forget? Right? And it's like, again, if you don't do that, how can I tell you something else? Right? So again, we only talked about one really
Right.
today.
Yeah.
Maybe we've talked about know yourself a little bit more too, but it's like, well, when you feel like you've mastered those two, then I don't know, ask me. Maybe we'll talk about more.
And maybe and maybe we'll never come back to Jason because
Well, I mean, and we'll, that's the thing is that um, sometimes we get given so much that it's just a little overwhelming.
hmm
And so again, I think, the small, simple what seem elementary things, if you can just do these, and when you feel comfortable that you're doing a pretty good job at it, then add another one to it, right? But trying to, have a list of 20 different things and then try each one of them a couple of times, you do not become a master at that point,
right.
and
Yeah.
so that's why, again, on here, we're going to talk about a lot of the same things because
Uh,
we're
no,
all
and it's
dealing with
good.
the same
And
things.
it's really good. I mean, I like to read kind of spiritual kind of books about different topics, esoteric sort of things. And that's one of the problems I run into is the book they try to give you a list of things. So they say, oh, well, here you want this. So here's one, two, three, four, five, six, seven you can do. And then you want this one. Here's one, two, three, four, five, six, seven you can do here. And they give you like all these different things that you can do. And it's just overwhelming. Like you can't hope to do all of it at once. And so half the time I
Are
find out
are they telling you have to do all seven of them, or like a pick from?
they're examples of things that you can do. Like, hey, you want to work on this, so here's some things.
Okay,
But
yeah.
they give you the five or six things that you could be trying to achieve or to accomplish. And even that's too much. Like we talked about, we spent 45 minutes talking just about do no harm and how that applies. Like if we would have tried to say, all right, we're talking about six different codes today, it would have been much. You couldn't have gotten into any of them. It wouldn't have been relevant. And that's kind of what I feel like a lot of these kind of books are, is these kind of, we throw all the spaghetti at you and maybe something will stick at you. Meanwhile, you end up with a face of spaghetti. Like,
Well, and that's why this is one
yeah,
of those things too, where it's you can't just hear it once. So I
right.
will tell you, I have a lot of recordings from different trainings, gatherings, teachings, whatever you want to call it. I listen to those
Hmm.
all the time. The one that I've been listening, usually it's like, what do I need to hear today? It's been
Hmm.
the same talk for like this whole week. I listened to it twice yesterday, you know. Um, every time you listen, you get something else too,
Yep.
because it's the same way with the sacred texts, like, the two that I referred to, the Tao Te
Hmm.
Ching, the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, there's a lot of different ones, Kuali, and that are out there. Every time you read it, something else will land differently. They're coded. They're intended to be confusing to people who are not ready and to be multi-layered for people who are ready because you get different layers at different times.
Yeah.
So even though we just talked about it, this one code today, if people actually went back and listened to this 5 or 10 times, there will be something new that you get out of what we just talked about today.
Yeah.
It will mean something different to you every time you listen to it. But most
Hmm.
people think, oh, I did it once. That's it. I blessed the water once. I'm good. I went to church once. I'm good. You know, I made an offering to so and so. I'm good. Well, are you? You know, if you only try something once, have you mastered it? No.
Right.
If you make an offering or a gift to a being and you do it once and that's it, what kind of a relationship are you actually developing with that being?
Right.
Right? That's like never talking to someone and then sending them a thank you card or a gift at Christmas time and then never talking to them again until next Christmas. What kind of
Professionals, take
what kind
note
of a
here. This is
relationship are
for
you going to
you.
have?
I know a lot of lawyers they do that, and I'm sure probably accountants too, is they give the Christmas
The
card, holiday
Christmas
Christmas card,
cards. I hate getting Christmas cards
and then
because
you never hear from them again.
no.
They have you one time. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's the same, it's like, and this again, it goes along with this is why do no harm is there. For those of you that only want to do something once or twice and then get distracted and move on to something else, or think that you know everything already and this is too elementary for you because you've moved on past that. Okay, move on. You know, it's there for a reason because we have to do these things over and over and over and over and over and over again
Hmm.
for them to really be able to sink in and for us to be able to master them. And that's the only way. The only way is the way. What do you think the Tao Te Ching means? It's the way. That's actually what Lao
What that
Tzu's
translates
book
to, yeah.
translates to is the way, right? So yeah, anyway, I'm going to shut up for now because we've already gone long enough. We need to,
Yeah.
but it's, yeah, there's a lot more in this episode than people realize.
Yeah. And every episode, I mean, not to toot our own horn or try to get, but it like legitimately there are things like obviously we're having this conversation here. I will go back to every single episode that we do and I listen to it afterwards. When after it comes out, once it's been posted, I go back and I open up YouTube and I watch our episodes. Sometimes I focus on the listening of the words. Sometimes I focus on just you and like the reactions on your face or kind of the like just like that,
Like
exactly,
that.
just like that, exactly. But there's always something else I get out of there, um, and yeah, one time is not enough.
No, no.
So.
But so again, it's like, the codes, it's about how we're doing things, who we're being when we're doing things.
Mhm.
And the more that we can kind of live by these, think about these, be more intentional about what we're doing, that's part of the process, right? Because like I said, you can do the
Mhm.
same act, but there's a difference between the intention and the uh, uh, cooperation, the consent, maybe of who it's being done to,
Mhm.
and it's important. It's important, and the more we go, the more you start to change how you're doing things and who you're being.
Yep. So, with that, you said we're going to shut up, and we'll let you guys take this back and listen to it again. Hopefully, you listen to this several times, and again, not just for our egos, because we want you to have those downloads, but just because you will hear something, you learn something different every time. Um, Different layers. We talked about the idea of the onion, all the different layers of the onion. Same thing here. There's just multi different layers to the puzzle. And once you get one, you figure out one puzzle, it reveals a second puzzle. And that one, you solve that, it reveals another puzzle. And it's just kind of one of those puzzles that opens up to a new puzzle every time. So,
Mhm. And then all of a sudden you realize, hold on, I'm back at that puzzle I was at before. Maybe I didn't solve it. Or, oh, ooh, there's something else to learn here. So,
then it becomes a hidden eye puzzle. And you're like, oh, if I
yeah.
turn this way and squint, then it's something
Then it
different.
looks different. Then it looks
And then I
different.
got to do the whole puzzle all over again because now it's a different puzzle than it started with by
Hmm.
squinting. So,
Hmm.
all right, we're getting silly. So with that, we're gonna cut it out. Hope you guys have a great week, and we will catch you guys on our next episode.
All right, see you, Brittany.